Hello everybody and a very warm welcome to Paul Ricard for this, the second weekend of the 2019 Spanish Formula 4 Championship, a triple header here around the home of the French Grand Prix, and it's Ben Evans and Elliot Wood with you all weekend to take you through the action as you join us on a sunny but very, very blustery day here at the Paul Ricard circuit, and the stiff breeze blowing throughout qualifying. We come into the weekend with, in terms of the championship, Shihab Al-Habsi as the championship lead by just 2 points from Franco Colapinto. However, neither of those two drivers are on the front row of the grid because it is Kilian Meyer who took pole position by the slenderest of margins, Elliot, from the very highly rated Red Bull junior Johnny Edgar.
Yeah, Johnny Edgar is one of Red Bull's two karting juniors, and he finished third in the WSK Champions Cup last year and fifth in the sister Masters Series, and they're both Italian-based championships. So for 2019, he'll be racing in Italian Formula 4 with Genza, and Genza's entered him this weekend for a learning weekend in car racing, so he knows what to do and how to be fast when he turns up in the Italian Series next weekend.
And it is his teammate Giorgio Carrara who lines up in third on the grid, another of the Genza drivers then.
Yep, Genza is a regular in Italian Formula 4, and there's their first weekend in Spain. They've got three drivers. They've got Carrara, Edgar and Emilio Pieschi, who is also a karting graduate from Italy. So Carrara is the lead of the team.
So let's have a look then how they line up then with Kilian Meyer and Johnny Edgar on the front row of the grid. Then it's Giorgio Carrara and Franco Colapinto on row 2. Artem Lobanenko on row 3 alongside Axel Noos to complete the top 6. Nicholas Beat in 7th ahead of Timjan van der Helm in 8th. Glenn van Berlo in 9th, and then Shihab Al-Habsi, the driver who leads the championship, starting from 10th ahead of Ghanem Rached. Ivan Nosov. Oh, and Johnny Edgar has stalled on the grid as we go through the rest of it. Carlos Martinez, Emilio Pesce on row 7, Rafael Villanova and Belen Garcia on row 8, with then Nerea Marti and Irina Sidorkova to round out the field. And Johnny Edgar, having stalled on the grid, I'm pleased to report that he should be able to wind his way through the field because not everybody who passed him was the head off on their formation lap.
If everyone had passed him, he would have had to have started from the pit lane as per procedure. But because of that, hopefully he'll be able to keep his front row advantage, which is very hard earned. In free practice, he was actually fastest by almost 2 seconds, but that was when the track was slightly damp, slightly wet, and the track's changed a lot since. The winds are a lot slower than they were yesterday, so hopefully this race will be free of too much drama.
But at the same time, what we're hoping for is that we're looking forward to a bit of slipstream with the winds. So as they drive into headwinds, then they should be able to tow each other. In terms of what happened then in Navarra at the start of the month, the winds were shared between Franco Colapinto, Belen Garcia and Shihab Al-Habsi. And it was Colapinto, though, who claimed the sweep of pole positions. This race is 18 minutes plus 1 lap around the Paul Ricard circuit. One of 2 trips outside Spain for the championship this year, because they also go to Portimao at the end of October. But from Paul Ricard, they head on to the Motorland Aragon and then the Valencia circuit, Jerez after the summer break, before Portimao and the circuit to Barcelona, Catalunya to round out the season. And it's good to see, Elliot, the Spanish Formula 4 Championship really growing. So I remember we had, I think, the inaugural year of the Spanish Formula 4 Championship with Euro Formula Open in Jerez. There are about 8 cars there. Now we've got 18 on the grid and a very competitive field.
Yeah, I think in the first season, Ricard Verschoor was champion. So we've had Formula 1 teams being involved in this series since the start. In 2017, it was Christian Lundgaard who was champion, who is one of Renault's junior drivers. And at the moment, as well as Edgar, we have Franco Colapinto, who's backed by none other than Fernando Alonso, Spanish racing legend.
He certainly is, and the Argentine driver will be hoping, in terms of the championship battle, to take advantage of the relatively muted qualifying session from Shihab Al-Habsi, of course, being very early stages of the championship. So the full championship order then coming into the weekend, it was Al-Habsi and Colapinto top of the standings, then Timjan van der Helm third in the points, and he starts from 8th for today's race. Rafael Villanova then 4th in the standings, and he's down in 15th on the grid. So this shaking up the order somewhat from Navarra. Not maybe that much of a surprise, given that the Paul Ricard circuit, it's a different challenge, and it's such a long lap, so much for the drivers to deal with.
Yeah. The long straight at Paul Ricard would produce slipstreaming if the wind was going one direction, but because we are very high up in the French mountains, it's quite possible that the wind can go the other way, and it will make overtaking quite difficult. And within a lap, you may have the wind going two different ways, and drivers get caught out by it.
They certainly do. So they're here on the grid then with the bright orange car of Kylian Mayer in pole position. It's the Red Bull livery car of Johnny Edgar alongside him. The sky blue car of Giorgio Carrara in third on the grid with Franco Colapinto alongside him. So for the first of 3 times this weekend, we're about to go racing in the Formula 4 Spanish Championship. 18 minutes plus 1 lap ahead of us here as we get the green flag from the marshal at the rear of the field. So they're going to look towards the gantry as the red lights are on now. We've got the hold, the lights flash out, and away we go. Who gets the jump from the line? And it's a good start from our pole sitter. It's also a very good getaway from Franco Colapinto from 4th on the grid, and he's going to go wheel to wheel with Giorgio Carrara as they head down towards turn 1 for the first time. But it's Mayer who leads from Edgar as they all try to squeeze through. Carrara sends Colapinto out wide. They're all through the first couple of turns, and I think Colapinto possibly a little bit over-optimistic with the ground that he's gained. Indeed, he allows Edgar back through into second. So it's Mayer from Edgar, then Colapinto ahead of Carrara.
Yeah, it was a great start by Colapinto there. He obviously has more experience of starts than Edgar, but the fact is, in Friday practice and testing, because the track was so wet, they weren't able to do practice starts off the line at the end of session. So that was the first time Edgar's ever started a car in a single-seater.
That's very impressive from Johnny Edgar as they head down then the back straight. They're all cleanly through, are they? Axel Nose has gone missing somewhere. Oh, and a huge lock-up from Edgar as they head into the chicane. Now, I think he's going to make it through okay, but he will surely have flat-spotted the tyre from that because the smoke was trailing as everybody else is cleanly through. We follow some of the drivers towards the tail of the field as Kylian Mayer leads the way. 0.4 of a second, clear Johnny Edgar. Then it is Franco Colapinto, Giorgio Carrara. They've got Artem Lobanenko and Tim van der Helm right up behind them.
Yeah, at the moment the gaps only look quite small, and as you said about Edgar locking up his tyres, Michelin actually bring different compounds to each round. So some of the drivers, such as Colapinto, have been saving their tyres for the later races this weekend.
It's all the thinking that goes on, even as drivers make their first steps into car racing. Now the leading quartet beginning to bunch up. Then there's the slight gap back to Lobanenko, Tim van der Helm. Shahal Al-Habzi's made a good start to the race, up into 7th place from 10th on the grid. And there's a couple of cars being investigated for a jump start. One of them is Kylian Mayer, the other is Giorgio Carrara. So that really could put the cat amongst the pigeons as the race leaders head into the chicane for the second time, and suggests the way they're all closing up on the straight, they're possibly driving into a headwind into that opening sequence.
Yeah, and because of slipstreaming, the top 3 are still within a second of each other, and although we don't have DRS in Spanish F4, it's always easier to make a pass when you're within that gap. If you're coming from too far back, it could result in an accident, and we don't want to see that.
It's probably worth explaining what slipstreaming is. It's basically the car in front will punch a hole in the air, and if you're sitting immediately behind it, you're able to get a little bit of a tow, and it can be very beneficial then if you can harness that to a slingshot to propel yourself past the car ahead of you as the race leaders heading along the Mistral straight for the second time, heading towards the chicane that bisects it. And this time around, it's Colapinto who is possibly beginning to shape up for a couple of designs on second place. But I think what's worth mentioning here, Elliot, is these cars are very, very evenly matched. There's not much the teams can do technically beyond setup changes to the driver's preference. And most of these drivers have got formidable karting pedigree behind them. And we're talking fractions of a second in terms of their individual performance in each lap.
Yeah, and it's almost where experience really counts, because this is the same car that's used in the German and Italian championships. And as we've only had 3 races this season, it could really be anyone's to play for. Certainly
could be. There's a good battle going on at the moment between Artem Lobanenko and Shihal Al-Habsi for 5th and 6th. Al-Habsi's going to go for the move. Just to the back of your picture, there's a challenge now for 3rd, looking to the inside there. Giorgio Carrara to the inside of Franco Colapinto, no way through. And what about the Al-Habsi battle? We'll find out momentarily, but here is the fight for the lead of the race, and another slightly snatched break from Edgar. Now, has he run wide? Colapinto fancies his chances and goes through. He sees the gap and executes pretty much a textbook manoeuvre for that corner.
Yeah, Colapinto's now in 2nd place, and if he makes one more move, he will technically have his 3rd win of the season. Unfortunately, his 2nd got taken away by a red flag infringement, and this will be his 1st time at Paul Ricard.
And meanwhile, there's plenty of battling going on behind us. Colapinto and Edgar are all sorts of different angles, but as they fight, what it allows is the race leader, Killian Meyer, to make good his escape, because immediately that gap has opened up. This is great stuff, side by side. Colapinto's got the track position. He should be able to edge out the Red Bull livery car of Edgar, but now he comes under pressure from Giorgio Carrara. Carrara sees a gap, goes for it, and fortunately, Edgar also saw his teammate was lunging to the inside and didn't shut the door, which is only ever really good news for Tatus rather than the drivers involved.
And although Edgar's dropped to 4th, he has got almost 2 seconds to 5th place Shahab Al-Habsi, who is our championship leader. And it's important that Meyer makes a gap up front because he's under investigation for a possible jump start.
He certainly is, as there is Al-Habsi, the driver in the grey car with the fluorescent yellow helmet, and Shahab Al-Habsi is closing up onto this fight for 2nd, because as they battle themselves down, there's 5 wide further back down the order. And very anxious. We've got one car with a damaged nose cone. We'll try and pick up who that was in a moment as they rejoin. And some brilliant icing going on there. That squabble, mind you, the fight for 2nd's equally good. And now Giorgio Carrara, the driver who rather has designs on 2nd position, he looks to try and challenge Franco Colapinto as they swing through turn 11. Double apexed right-hander. Starting up the hill into turn 12. And the race now 6 minutes old, just beginning to settle down a little bit. Killian Meyer, his advantage 1.7 seconds, which, if the investigation for the jump start leads nowhere, is quite a handy advantage. If he does have to serve a drive-through penalty or the like, then it still leaves him with an awful lot of ground to cover.
And Giorgio Carrara is also under investigation for a jump start, so he'll be wanting to make a move on Franco Colapinto soon. But behind them, Shahab Al-Habsi, he's almost a 2nd faster on the last lap, so he should be closing in on the top 4 soon.
Now, the driver who lost their nose cone into the chicane, found out having no front downforce into the Courbe du Cygne is an experience that's not good for anything except elevating your blood pressure. Meanwhile, absolutely seesawing at the wheel there. That's Ivan Nozov, and you could see the wonderful shot there, the driver at the wheel, and it's actually giving him a chance to maybe challenge Artem Loganemko, but he's got Glenn Van Berlo looking to the outside of him. Van Berlo trying to slide through, bit of damage as well to Van Berlo's nose cone. Contemplates a look to the inside, thinks better of it. This is the fight for 6th, 7th and 8th place. They're about to be joined by Nicolas Bayart as well, and Ghanam Rashed in 10th, not too far back either.
Yeah, and MP Motorsports lineup has Rafa Villanueva, who is a Spanish F4 veteran, and 3 top Dutch karting graduates who may want to be looking to be the next Max Verstappen. And
they're all very much in the thick of the action. So it was, unfortunately, Tim-Jen van der Helm, who's the driver who got the damaged nose cone. He has been in and out of the pits, it would appear, to get that repaired. As all more brave stuff into the Courbe du Cygne. Giorgio Carrara is really going for it, isn't he? It feels like he is the Argentine driver itching to get underway. Here's the fight then for 6th place, and it's Glenn Van Berlo leading the MP charge at the moment. Oh, he looks inside turn 11. That was very, very nearly interlock wheels. Earned a spin in front of him, and around goes Ivan Novov. Almost contact there with Nicolas Bayart. Quite how that didn't turn into a fairly substantial incident. It may still have done, as we've got a car spinning stage right, and that was possibly, maybe Bayart did get a tag. We'll find out shortly. If it was, he was completely innocent, and that was a huge spin from Nozov.
Yeah, he was running in 7th place at that point, so it would have been a great result for him, but he's cost that. It looks like top 4 are still battling up front, going into turn 1 now.
Yeah, and Killian Meyer, his lead came down by 1.3 seconds over the last lap.
Yeah, Colapinto set the fastest lap by 0.7 seconds compared to his previous lap.
And we've got yellow flag over at turn 11. It is Nicolas Bayard, unfortunately, who hasn't come through, as now Colapinto looks to line up the move, and he's going to go for it on Gillian Meyer. Darts to the inside of the Spaniard. So Franco Colapinto taking over in the lead of the race, and he's running the FA Motorsport colours. Now here is another look at the spin. Ivan knows if he saw a gap, went for it. I think he did just snag possibly Nicolas Bayard. Another look at it from this angle. Yes, the rear suspension of Bayard's car askew, and that's what sent him spinning.
And the top four are still covered by 1 second, and it looks like Carrara, who did set the fastest lap last time round, is looking for the lead. And car number 8, that's Nicolas Bayard, has stopped on track.
Yeah, and the way he's getting out of the car, the body language, you don't need to speak Dutch to get the gist of what he was saying, as Carrara goes side by side into the Corps de Scene with Johnny Edgar, and Edgar's going to challenge around the outside here, and you know what, he might just make it. Carrara, though, has got the inside line and has got the track position, looking to try and fight back then is Edgar. This is the yellow flag section, as they all slow down and cease and desist from racing each other.
Yeah, and although they would have all had to slow down there, Franco Colapinto has already pulled out half a second up front, and he was half a second behind the previous lap. He's doing a good job.
He really is. As just wonder, you talked about tyres earlier on, whether Gillian Meyer's just gone out a little bit too hot at the start of this race and is beginning to fade. He's now got Giorgio Carrara right up behind him, 7.25 minutes plus a lap remain. So the order is Colapinto from Meyer, then Carrara. No, it's not. It is Carrara from Meyer to the inside into the chicane to start the lap. And so Giorgio Carrara now sets off in pursuit of Franco Colapinto. It's Johnny Edgar then in 4th, Al Habsi in 5th, Lobodenko in 6th, Van Berlo 7th, Rashed in 8th, and then Martinez in 9th, Villanova in 10th.
And Edgar's just gone for a move for 3rd. He's side by side with Meyer, and he's got through down the inside. Now, because we're at altitude here at Paul Ricard, it may not just be a case of tyres, but the engine may lose a bit of power, especially along these long straights.
Another look at that move. Textbook stuff from Giorgio Carrara, and it wasn't fought too hard either from Gillian Meyer. So now, Giorgio Carrara, what can he, if anything, do about Franco Colapinto? But interestingly, Colapinto, as soon as getting in the lead of the race, he's just posted the fastest lap, a 2 minutes 6.3.
Yeah, Carrara's last lap was 2:07.016. Now, he previously held the fastest lap, and he was in 3rd place. So he's making the same charge, I would expect, as Colapinto is.
He is, and also look at Giorgio Carrara. The first 2 sets of this lap, he is already about 0.4 of a second up on Franco Colapinto. So that gap is going to start to chip down, maybe. The gap between them is 0.9 of a second, as Gillian Meyer looking to get back onto terms with Edgar. Now, the other driver who's in the mix here is Shihab Al Habsi, who last time around was 1.3 seconds quicker than Gillian Meyer.
Yeah, and Al Habsi did actually have around a 2 second gap earlier in the race, so that hasn't come down as much as we expected it would, but he might be biding his time, looking after his tyres for the very last few laps of this race.
So fast lap of the race goes to Giorgio Carrara, but only a fraction, we're talking 0.02 of a second here, quicker than Franco Colapinto. And so as a result, Colapinto's advantage at the front of the field is maintained. Edgar then in 3rd, Meyer 4th, Al Habsi in 5th, and then there's a big gap back, some 6 or so seconds to Glenn Van Berlo in 6th, ahead of Artem Lokonenko, Gonam Rashad, Carlos Martinez, and then Rafael Villanova to round out the top 10.
And showing the benefit of the slipstream on the top speed, our leader Franco Colapinto at 211.7 kilometers per hour, and every other driver around him is at 213 or above.
It's impressive, isn't it? And that speed trap is, from memory, at the end of the start and finish straight. So Colapinto down the first half of the Mistral Straight. Picks his way through the chicane, uses all the grip available to him. Glenn van Berlo has just set the fastest first sector anybody in the race, and he was running in fairly clear air as the leading quartet for now relatively stable. Johnny Edgar has shaken off our pole position early race leader, Kilian Meyer. We have got Shahab Al-Habsi having lost quite a bit of ground actually through the early stage of this lap. He's fallen back about half a second or so from Kilian Meyer. And Colapinto though, through turn 11, and the car just starting to move, and I guess the clock will tell us whether that's driver preference to slip and slide a bit, or if something's beginning to go away from him.
Yes, and Edgar had a lock-up at the same corner there. That was where we had yellow flags earlier, so the drivers haven't been in at full throttle through that corner for several laps, so they may be just getting used to it again.
It's a very, very good spot as the race leaders head out of turn 15 once more. This is to complete the 7th lap of the race, and it is to start the antepenultimate lap of the race as well. So there's going to be 3 to go as Carrara a little bit closer to Colapinto at lap end relative to last time around. And yes, fast lap of the race for Giorgio Carrara, and this time 0.3 second quicker than Franco Colapinto.
Yeah, and we've also got a battle for 7th place at the moment between Artem Lobonenko and Ghanem Rashed. They were side by side going along the pit straight, so we'll wait to see if they prop up in our picture again.
Yeah, we shall have a look for that. Lobonenko and Rashed. Also just see when they next come through the first sector as to who had their nose in front. Meanwhile, Adventures further back, and that's a spin for Belen Garcia. He was dicing with the Medio Pesce, nothing fishy about that, but a spin for Garcia nonetheless.
Yes, and Garcia won at the first round of the season, benefiting from a red flag infringement for Colapinto, and she became the first female winner in the Spanish F4 Championship.
And this time provoking the yellow flags, having benefited from the red flags in Navarra, as Giorgio Carrara could be timing this to absolute perfection, because he's just been steadily easing in. As here is a look at, was this Lobonenko and Rashed doing battle? It was, oh, very, very close there. Ghanem Rashed, I think, maybe caught out just by when Artem Lobonenko jumped on the anchors then.
And Colapinto's
gone missing.
Yeah.
So where is Franco Colapinto? And here is the answer, a big spin through turn 11. Oh, he's gone right out to the red asphalt. That won't do his tyres any good at all.
And I believe the blue and red asphalt strips actually have a purpose here.
They do. So the blue strips slow the cars down. The red asphalt, it's equivalent to really getting in the gravel trap, and generally is really high abrasion. And once you go out into that territory, you're possibly thinking about a trip towards the pits. Now, Carrara leads then from Edgar. I just want to have a look at, and there's been an incident up at the final turn as well. 2 of the cars running out very, very wide. So just want to have a look at the tyres there on Colapinto's car.
Yeah, and you can see him at the wheel as well. So maybe further damage to the car.
If you look there, it's the rear. He's got real graining just there in the rear right. Now here is what happened. That was a case of ambition overriding the available space.
And that's between Rafa Villanueva, Carlos Martinez, going through the final corner. Oh, and both of them went off, and there's significant rear damage to, looks like,
that'd be
Martinez's car.
Oh, that's a real pity. It wasn't a huge tag. It was in much the way that Nicholas Bert got taken out of the race, just the wrong angle, dinking the suspension. So the clock has ticked to 0. We're in the penultimate lap of the race. Oh, and that is Villanova very emphatically out of proceedings.
Yeah, and because of Colapinto's spin, Carrara's built up a 2.622 second lead. That's now 2.746 second lead to Johnny Edgar, who, remember, is in his first car race, and he'll be on the podium at this rate.
Started second, looks like he is going to finish second. Still a lap and a half to go. And some of the teams with quite a lot of work to do, because they've got their second race of the weekend later on this afternoon. And in the case of Rafael Villanueva, that means he is in urgent need of a new front left corner to the car.
And the incident that took out Villanueva is currently under investigation, as is Ghanem Rashed's involvement with that crash.
So they are, that will just be looked at maybe to see if the sense was that was possibly a little bit too ambitious. As across the line then comes Giorgio Carrara. This is to start the final lap of the race. He leads by 2.7 seconds from Johnny Edgar. Franco Colapinto then in third, 1.7 seconds back. And for Colapinto, though, in terms of the championship, he's going to finish several places ahead of Shahab Al-Habsi, and therefore this will, by my admittedly terrible maths, propel him into the lead of the championship heading into the second race of the afternoon.
And although on the last lap, Carrara and Edgar are relatively evenly matched, over the last few laps, lap times have dropped for many of the drivers, although Carrara's been keeping in the 206s and 207s, which is very impressive.
It's been a really impressive job of race management, this actually, from Giorgio Carrara. And Colapinto, he could see Carrara getting larger in his mirrors, and hence the spin over at turn 11. So, down the Mistral straight for the final time, and Kilian Meyer has dropped right back from Colapinto, and the camera angle is probably foreshortening it a little bit, but Glenn Van Berlo may fancy his chances of snatching fourth place on the final lap of the race.
And it looks like Al-Habsi might lose sixth as well, because Artem Lobanenko is right on his tail. There's only half a second between the two right now.
And Shihab Al-Habsi, his last lap was a 2 minutes 13.8. His pace has just completely plummeted, and through the first sector he was a good 2 seconds slower than Artem Lobanenko as well. So that is potentially going to get even worse, I'd suggest, for Al-Habsi. Carlos Martinez is also through, as Al-Habsi is yet to come through the second sector. He does now 44.9, and that indicates something fairly substantially wrong for him in the late stage of the race. No such dramas, though, for Giorgio Carrara, who made a good start to the race, has been in the thick of the action throughout, some very well-judged overtaking manoeuvres, putting the pressure on Franco Colapinto as he heads through the final turn. The checkered flag is poised, ready and waiting, and the winner of the fourth round of the 2019 Formula 4 Spanish Championship is Giorgio Carrara, with across the line in second place Johnny Edgar on the podium in his first car race. Franco Colapinto completes the podium, and Glenn Van Berlo has leaped past Kilian Meyer on the last lap of the race. So Van Berlo to fourth, Meyer to fifth, and Artem Lobanenko rounding out the top six.
We're still waiting for Shahab Al-Habsi to cross the line, but this is Giorgio Carrara and Johnny Edgar's first Spanish F4 race, and the first for the Genza Motorsport team, 1-2 on their debut.
They will be very pleased with that, and will probably have a delegation of other teams looking for some of the secrets, forming an orderly queue in the paddock. Al-Habsi has come through in 8th place ahead of Midio Pesce, with Belen Garcia then completing the top 10.
And although Al-Habsi dropped 20 seconds there, he actually set a lap faster than anyone else on the last lap.
No, that was Carlos Martinez at 207.7. Al-Habsi was the 2 minutes 21, but fortunately he didn't get overhauled by Midio Pesce or the others. So very much a case of job done there for Giorgio Carrara, and the Formula 4 Spanish Championship return later on this afternoon. Our coverage will start round about 5:10 local time. Here then is a look at the classification, with Carrara 3.1 seconds in the end, his advantage over Johnny Edgar, and Carrara also sending the fastest lap of the race. Franco Colapinto in third, head of Glenn Van Berlo in fourth. Kilian Meyer, the pole sitter, eventually fading to fifth, head of Artem Lobanenko, who was in the thick of the action throughout, with a very fine sixth. Carlos Martinez in seventh, Shahab Al-Habsi down to 8th. Midio Pesce in 9th. Belen Garcia, despite that huge spin, finishing in 10th, head of Irina Sidorkova. Nerea Marti in 12th, and then we're into those that got into trouble. Tim-Jen van der Helm had a new nose cone early on. Rafael Villanueva, Ghanem Rashed, Ivan Nozov, Nicolas Bayard will all need repairs ahead of race 2. And Axel Nose, he never really got going.
And although Johnny Edgar span stalled on the warm-up lap, he finished second in his first ever car race. So you'd better think that Red Bull will be impressed by that performance.
Yeah, you certainly would hope so, wouldn't you? And for all these drivers, it's a case of learning and progressing all the while. And this is a circuit that they'd all like to come back to in 3 or 4 years' time as Toro Rosso or Red Bull Racing or other Formula One drivers. And there's always something very special about taking a win at a Formula One circuit, and that is what Giorgio Carrara has managed to do here this afternoon. Johnny Edgar, also the top rookie in the probably most direct sense of the word, with second position. And then Franco Colapinto will eventually arrive into Parc Ferme.
And he will arrive into Parc Ferme as our new championship leader. He was 2 points behind Shahab Al-Habsi coming into this race. And with Al-Habsi finishing 8th and Colapinto finishing 3rd, he should be 11 points ahead. My calculations are correct.
We'll wait and see. Congratulations and discussions between the Genza Racing teammates as Colapinto now rolls into position, manages to bump into his parking place, and possibly a level of frustration there for Colapinto. It's always so irritating as a driver when you're in the lead of the race and you spin away. Yes, you're under pressure, but it's not contact, and Carrara was there, but he wasn't within a tenth of a second of him.
Yeah, and Carrara does have significant experience of this car and the Genza team in Italy. So he applied that experience well here today.
So congratulations to Johnny Edgar, and Edgar making a bright start to his car racing career. The drivers heading up through the pit complex up to the podium.
Yeah, and this will be Genza's first win in the championship on their first weekend. And although it's only a one-off for now, the team boss earlier this week did say he was looking forward to a great event and would hope to come back for more rounds of the Spanish F4 Championship.
Well, they've certainly had a good start to it, but what can the others do to fight back? We will find out later on this afternoon. Another 18-minute plus 1 lap race for the Formula 4 Spanish Championship. Here's a look back then at the highlights, and off the line it was good getaway from Kylian Mayer. Edgar slotting second, with behind Franco Colapinto and Giorgio Carrara going wheel to wheel for third position as they arrived into the opening chicane. It was Colapinto who was one of a couple that scattered wide. Fortunately, they all stayed out of trouble and contact, as in the early stages there was plenty of dicing. Colapinto was the first driver who was really up with the mobile, passing Edgar through the final turn. As behind it all got a little bit too close for comfort. Ivan Nosov pushing a little bit too hard, and he tagged Nicholas Bayat, and that eventually put both drivers out of the race. Nosov returned to the pits, but Bayat was pretty much out on the spot. Broken rear right suspension and a very frustrated driver. Colapinto leading the way, then pushed a little bit too hard into turn 11, out across the asphalt runoff area. He rejoined in third place. Meanwhile, Rafael Villanueva went for a gap that was never really there. And as a result, that was race over for him. For Giorgio Carrara, however, no such concerns. of victory on his first outing of the season in the Formula 4 Spanish Championship. Johnny Edgar in second place and top rookie, and Franco Colapinto completing the podium.
And one notable absentee from this race was Al-Habsi's XL Motorsport teammate Matteo Nannini. Now, he is the reigning Formula 4 United Arab Emirates champion, and he competed in the first round of the season, picking up 2 top 5 finishes. But he's since moved on to Formula 3, so these F4 drivers, once they've learnt their craft, can move on very quickly. They
really can, and chance to appreciate, I think, just how breezy it is by looking at the podium. We will be back later on this afternoon. Make sure you join us around 5:10 Central European Time. Until then, from Elliot Wood and Ben Evans and Paul Ricard, it's goodbye.
Goodbye.
de l'après-midi à passer ensemble ici sur les circuits Paul Ricard à l'issue de cette très belle course de Formule 4. Content pour le championnat espagnol, on va se retrouver d'ici quelques instants, je vous le rappelle, pour le podium officiel.